Good evening, everyone out there and people in the future.
Live from upstate New York. It's Friday night.
Yes. We were just discussing Bob Ross and Bill Alexander and PBS art supplies.
Mm-hmm.
And the type that we use.
Yeah. Because if you checked my channel earlier, I had an art supply unboxing. I just made a swatch. Matter of fact, I should put today's date on it so I don't forget. Let's see, what is today? The 30th?
The 30th, last day of September.
Yeah, 22. So now in the future, I'll be able to know when I made it. We're talking about fugitive colors. Wilson had not heard that term before. A fugitive color is a color that fades over time, disappears, loses its color. Because I found in this, I bought besides individual tubes, I bought like a 10-pack, like starter set of gouache. And then I bought another 12 tubes after that. I like the robot cameo in your unboxing. Yeah, that was weird. I don't know what that was. It was like I'm sitting here doing my unboxing, and all of a sudden my Apple speaker said something, but I don't know what it was. I was like, and it wasn't the Siri voice either. It was like this weird robot voice, and I was like, I didn't quite get. I was like, oh right, that startled me.
The uprising is starting.
But yeah,
Earthlings. Exterminate.
That's kind of the voice it had. But here I noticed in this little piece of paper I got with my designer gouache, it shows you all the colors in the set. Not that I bought all those colors. I bought 22 colors altogether, I think it was. But it has a little chart that tells you which colors are permanent and which colors are fugitive. And the ratings go extremely permanent. Permanent, I don't know what the difference between those two is. Moderately durable. How come there's no durable? And fugitive. It's like, that's some weird. I think it's in English, and that looks like German. Oh, it's in 6 different languages. Is that Italian? What's color with an I at the end of it? What language is that?
Colori, Italian.
That's Italian.
Yeah.
And this one says Farbmission. That must be German. Instead, this all means color mixing, by the way. Farbmission. So they've only got one word for 2 words. The Germans will do that too. Let's see. Clearin, Kleurenmengen. Color. Where's color Clearin?
Kleu.
Yes, Kleuren for color.
Cleven.
Do you know what language that is?
If that's close to the if that's close to the other one, no. Maybe it's Dutch.
Yeah, that might be Dutch because I see LIJK here too. That's
okay, so that's Dutch.
That's Dutch. Mezcla de colores.
That's Spanish.
That's Spanish.
Mezcla de colores.
And mélange de couleurs. That must be French.
Mélange de couleurs.
There. So we got French, Spanish, Dutch, German, Italian, and English going on in this one here. All right. Now that we know all the languages, the Winsor Newton Designer Gouache pamphlet comes in, our lives are broader and more fulfilled.
Added more color to it.
Yeah.
It was our own mélange de couleurs.
But I like how the Germans have color mixing in one word. Everybody else has at least 2 words. They have one word for color mixing.
Yeah. Do you know the German word for hospital?
No.
Krankenhaus. The house of the sick. The German, when you get down to it, Germany is actually quite simple, but we all think it's complicated.
Color mixing must be its own concept and not 2 words jammed together.
Though I think I once saw that in the Guinness record book, the biggest word in German. Okay.
What's a name for an animal?
Kraftfahrzeuge Haftpflichtversicherung.
What does that mean?
Insurance company, motor vehicle liability insurance. It's one word.
Well, Big Bird taught us the longest word in the English language.
That's true, he did.
Which is the alphabet, for those who don't know. A Sesame Street song sung by Big Bird, where he pronounces the alphabet as one word.
I remember watching that episode.
Yeah, I had the we had the Sesame Street album. Hello there, Mind the Comics. It said Skyline now online. That's what the robot voice interrupted my video with. Cavern of Germans. Greetings. Greetings, sleepy reader. Yeah, the other one I got this week, I just bought this packet. They're called Graphite color watercolors. So I guess they're just kind of these dull gray color things. I saw them on like Amazon for like $15. So I got them and made a swatch of them too. So I was making swatches this afternoon. I still have no idea what I'm going to do with all this gouache, but I'm going to make something with it.
Do not give them to your nephews.
No.
There will be graphite handprints everywhere.
Everywhere. So the big comic book news, at least far as I'm concerned, that I saw this afternoon was Mike Martz is leaving Aftershock.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
It was a surprise to me too. He made a big announcement. He made a big announcement. He made an announcement on like Twitter and Facebook and I guess wherever. For those who don't know, Mike Martz was the editor-in-chief of Aftershock from when he said it's been 8 years now since it started. And
last time I heard of him, it was what? Assistant editor on the X-Men? Was it?
Yeah, he was an X-Men assistant editor. Before Aftershock, he was the editor of the Batman line too. So
Harris took him.
Yeah, he's been he's been an editor at Marvel, I think, in twice, and with an editor at DC and Aftershock. Paulo, was Sesame Street translated and airing when you were a kid?
Yes, but I was not the target audience. I was about 10.
What
not
color
that I didn't
was
watch
your
it.
Big Bird?
Orange.
It was orange. Yeah, because I didn't know until I was watching a documentary on Sesame Street that every country has their own colored Big Bird. They're all related to Big Bird, but they have their own color and their own name.
I did not know that.
Ours was called Popish. Pompadour. Although that had nothing to do with Pompadour.
Wow. And I was wondering what Mike Martz was going to do next, because I can't imagine he quits this job without another one lined up. But he didn't mention anything.
He did not. Reading the I think I read it on Instagram, the text on Instagram.
Right.
And he mentioned various people and items that he met during his career.
The announcement was all about his time at Aftershock and how much fun he had and how he enjoyed it, and he mentioned everyone he worked with, all the great people, which leads me to believe.
Exactly.
Mike Martz he's a good guy. He's competent. He's well liked in the industry. So I have to imagine he's got something. He's not a crazy freelancer like Wilson and I. He's always had a staff job his entire career. So I imagine he's got something lined up.
That's what I'm guessing. I'm guessing because, again, this is his goodbye letter. So, of course, it's going to be all about Aftershock. And because you don't want to, in that same letter, you don't want to go, oh, and by the way, here's where I'm going to next.
Right.
So it could be into anything. Maybe continue in publication, or what's the next thing after comics is animation or movies or something.
Or teaching art.
What was that?
Or teaching art.
Teaching art. Who knows?
Yeah.
I have to imagine if he's leaving Aftershock, he might have a bigger job lined up with Marvel or DC. That's the only reason to leave Aftershock.
Would Marvel and DC be hiring right now?
I don't know. That's what makes it. I don't even think
DC is not hiring.
No.
The current CEO of Discovery wants to reduce all overhead.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Maybe Marvel, but I don't even know what he could possibly do at Marvel that would make him want to leave Aftershock. So I'm anxiously waiting to see what he does next because I can't imagine he's got nothing lined up.
Well, there's that rumor that Todd McFarlane is licensing DC to publish.
Yeah.
And he would need a decent editor.
Yeah, he would. He would. I don't know if Mike Martz and Todd know each other, but I wouldn't surprise me if they did. I mean, he was the Batman editor and the X-Men editor. How many people wouldn't know him who worked in comics? And I imagine they were at conventions together. But I don't know. These rumors about DC or Marvel licensing their characters to make comics of have come out before, but I'll believe it when I see it, kind of thing, because it would be hard. I can't imagine that would make DC any more money. So, do you think that means Aftershock is in trouble? I'm always wondering how long these small companies last. I don't think so, but who knows? I'm pretty sure he was important to the company, but he wasn't the head guy. Kind of like Joe Pruitt was really was that his name, Joe Pruitt, who he met? I think he was the guy who hired Mike Martz, who was behind. I don't think that would mean Aftershock was in trouble, but you never know. It's a comic company. Hope he likes love checks. Todd McFarlane and his love checks. It's not royalties. It's not. What was that one that Marvel said they send out? Not royalties, Wilson.
Residuals.
It's love checks. Checks we send.
I haven't heard of love checks. That's the new one.
That was in the kayfabe guys were reading the transcripts for the Neil Gaiman Todd McFarlane lawsuit.
Oh, okay.
So it was like one of them would be the lawyer, one of them would be McFarlane or Neil Gaiman, and Neil Gaiman said that because they were trying to figure out who owns Angela and who owns what, and Neil Gaiman kept early on going, we got to, when he was working with Todd, was saying things like, we got to get this in paper and then on paper and whatever, and it just kind of never happened. And instead of, he would send, Neil Gaiman a big check for doing the issue. And Neil Gaiman was like, well, what is this check for? And Todd McFarlane said, those are love checks.
Watching that episode of Kayfabe, it was one of the most surreal conversations that I've ever heard.
Oh, yeah. That's some fun. If you ever have some time to kill, go to Kayfabe and listen to them read the transcripts.
The thing is, even with Angela appearing in the Spawn movie and the action figures, Neil Gaiman would not have cared about Angela if it wasn't for the shenanigans that Todd did with Miracle Man.
Yeah. Got his attention, and Todd was just flying by the seat of his pants. Just doing what, he didn't have contracts for him. I think we'll treat you better than Marvel and DC will. Was the legally binding contract, verbal contract it ended up being, because that got mentioned a few times.
Yeah. Our checks don't have a rubber stamp. They have hearts for love.
Yeah, love checks.
Love checks, baby.
But I did get an Aftershock comic this week. I picked up another one. I've been buying all of these TGIF to you too, 62 Lefty Blues.
Hey.
I've been picking up all of these graphic novel-sized Aftershock ones. They're $8 for 40 or 42 pages. And I just let most of them are, except for the Garth Ennis series, most of them are done in ones. And I don't have to think about it's just fun to pick up a comic and read it. And this one's about wrestling, wrestling noir. Hell is a squared circle. It's really it's kind of a crime comic as much as anything that happens to star a wrestler. And I've had, even the ones I haven't liked, I've enjoyed. But if I'm enjoying them, I wonder how much they're selling. Because I always say, if I'm your target audience, you're in trouble. My taste is not very, not very mainstream. The one shots are the only Aftershocks I get anymore. Me too. I'm enjoying these one shots, and they're like their $5 first issues chased me off. But these, $8 40 pagers, which breaks down to about $4 an issue, which, oversized, nicely printed, nicely done. I don't have to go, do I want to buy any more issues of that? Should I put it on my pull list? But another weird thing about these is they've been returnable, my comic shop says. So I guess that I don't know how much money they've lost on the returnability of these. So who knows? But I've been enjoying them. This one was good too. It was about a loser wrestler villain who drinks too much and wants to move up in the world and ends up getting involved in crime, or to say involved in crime makes you think there's somebody else committing crimes but him. But it was really just him committing crimes. And it's by, who is this? Chris Condon, Francesco Biagini, Mark Englert, and Dave Sharp on the letters.
Oh, Dave doing the lettering. Cool.
Yeah, he's been doing a lot of lettering for them and for Bad Idea. I've never heard of Chris Condon and Francesco Biagini. Biagini.
The names are not familiar to me. And I think Aftershock does a lot of, or most of their books are creator-owned books as well.
I think so, yeah. Well, hold on. Copyright 2022 by Chris Condon and Aftershock Comics. So it's the writer and Aftershock who holds the copyright on this. That's weird. I guess the artist was just an artist for hire.
Francesco Biagini has an Instagram page.
You bought that book too, 62.
Yeah, there's the cover to that graphic novel.
September 2022.
And some freakish vampires and ghouls.
Paolo, I went back in last Saturday and picked up the oversized Tex hardcover. It's great.
Oh, nice.
Aftershock almost always shares copyright with the writer, but not the artist. So that's interesting. Wow. So the artists are all just artists for hire. That's weird. Wonder why that is. Who knows?
Because we can't have superstar artists.
Mike Martz learned that from Bob Harris.
Yep. And the other thing I bought this week and haven't read yet is I bought the Echolands hardcover. This is the J.H. Williams one that opens sideways and reads all the way across with all these beautiful extra long pages that go all the way across. This is one that I picked up the first issue of And since it's J.H. Williams, the art is, of course, incredibly well designed and nice looking. But it was like, I think the first issue was $5 for 20 pages. And I was just like, ah. And the comic also opened sideways, which I found a little clumsy. And I said to myself, you know what? If they come out with a nice hardcover version of this, I'll buy it. But I didn't want to buy the individual issues just because I didn't want to pay $5 a piece for them and then have them come out with a nice hardcover for about the same price. The price on this is $35 for 6 issues. So it's a little bit higher priced, but you get it on Amazon for $30 or whatever. So it was the same price as buying all the individual issues. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just I'll just wait for the hardcover and see if it comes out. So in the crossing of the Brooklyn Bridge on this one, I cut in front of the line and I was the asshole rather than the sucker who well, have you heard me talk about that? My Brooklyn Bridge analogy?
I haven't heard the Brooklyn Bridge part of it, but I have heard you say that second part.
Suckers and assholes. Well, the
Yeah.
Brooklyn Bridge part of it is when you're when you're on the FDR, heading down to cross the Brooklyn Bridge, there's 2 right-hand lanes you have to get into in order to cross the bridge. Now those always back up. And you can be the sucker who gets in the lane and waits his turn, or you can be the asshole who cuts in front of everybody and tries to make it in. Those are your 2 choices. There's no secret way across the Brooklyn Bridge. You either feel like a sucker or an asshole. And it's the same thing with comics sometimes. You're either the sucker who buys them month by month and pays the highest price for them, or you're the asshole who lets everybody else pay the price for him and then buys the collected edition cheap. Those are your 2 choices. You have to be okay with either one. I bought 2 versions of the Echolands comic and then the hardcover. That's right. Besides the normal Echolands comic, there was a rough cut of it that printed just the pencils.
Oh, okay.
So you could pay another $5. You could pay $10 a month, get 2 issues of Echolands, and then buy the hardcover. That's what Sleepy Reader did. I'll probably end up buying another even more giant size hardcover of Echolands too. Put an extra large one.
Extra giant size.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that the book is in that format as you were flipping through it and showing it. I wonder if the original idea is that it was going to be something digital where you just kept scrolling across and just kept reading the story. Because I've seen digital comics just do the scrolling down and it's just continuous going that way. But
Scott McCloud did something
interesting.
like that.
Yeah. So I thought that was something interesting. I'm wondering if it was made to do that way. Because I think that's more of a natural reading experience going across than it would be going down.
Mm-hmm. You can also be the artist and cross the bridge on foot. No, yes, the Brooklyn Bridge you can. But if you've got a car, it's not encouraged that you go over the footpath with your car.
It's not encouraged, but it probably has been done.
I'm not saying it's never been done, but it's thoroughly discouraged from driving your car over the footpath.
I have yet to walk across the Brooklyn Bridge. That's more of a New Yorker tourist thing than it is a regular New Yorker thing, I think.
Well, the lawyer in his nice car, laughs at you, Gus. Yeah. Do you know when I walked across the Brooklyn Bridge? During the blackout.
Oh, okay.
2004.
Something. No, maybe 2003.
2003. I was still at Marvel. And I couldn't get home. It was when Marvel was on 40th Street. I was still at Marvel, and they closed Port Authority, so I wasn't getting a bus out home to the suburbs. So I was It was before we knew the blackout was not ending. Because if those of you who don't know about or never heard about the whole, you know what? The only time you hear the term the Eastern Seaboard is when there's a blackout.
Yeah,
It's like
that's the only time
the
at
only time
all.
anyone ever mentions the Eastern Seaboard here in the United States is when there's a big event like a blackout happening, because the whole East Coast of the United States up into Canada too blacked out. And so at first it was like, it was 3 p.m. at Marvel or something like that. And they're like, everyone's got to evacuate. So we all evacuated. I went over to Bryant Park. So I was just hanging out in Bryant Park, walking around. There's some other people hanging out in Bryant Park too. I think some people went to the Bryant Park outdoor bar and were hanging out. Walked over to Part Authority to see if buses were running. There's nothing running in and out of the tunnels. So I'm walking around the park, and all of a sudden, I run into my friend Matt, and he's like, "Jared." I'm like, "Hey, Matt, what you doing?" He's like, I thought to myself, where would Jared be going during a blackout? So I headed to Bryant Park.
How many people did you see carrying television sets?
None. There was no looting during this one. There was no
not at all.
looting
So it was,
especially in the afternoon.
and you have to remember, this is August 14th, 2003, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This is also New York City after 9/11.
Yeah.
So we were more, I think New York itself was more happy that it was just a blackout.
The spirit of cooperation was in the air.
Was amazing. It was everyone was quiet when we evacuated the building. When we got downstairs into the street, everyone was just scrambling just to get to a radio to find out what actually happened. Once we knew that it wasn't an attack, that it was just our power grid on the Eastern Seaboard, we were more surprised that it was that much, that many states are off, that it was a blackout. Again, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not a terrorist attack. We're like, okay, what do we do? We were, I believe, it's the fact that it was such a non-issue because it wasn't a terrorist attack.
Right.
Everybody was more like, so what do we do now? I guess we go home. And
everybody was friendly to one another, helping out.
Completely, people actually were put. What I found was amazing was that you had people in the streets turning up their car radio so everyone could hear what it was. And the moment we knew what it was, everyone's like, okay, I guess we got the afternoon off. And then some buses were letting people on to take them as where they could. Subway's out, and we 40th Street. So I had to walk basically all of Manhattan to try to get home. So I ended up crashing at a friend's house because she lived in Manhattan, but at the tip of Manhattan. So she's a 20-minute walk from my place at that time. But that's crossing a bridge into the Bronx. She lived at the tip of Manhattan. So it was, I don't know, a 7-hour walk from 40th Street to 200 and something is where she was located. So it was a long walk, and by the end of the walk, I was kind of delirious because all I could think is like, I'll get upstairs, I'll take a shower, and I'll sit in front of the air conditioning. But it was surreal because people were quiet, friendly.
There was no panic.
No looting's going on. No looting, no panic. There were places, pizza shops had ovens still kind of running. So they were giving out free pizza. If you needed water, a store would give it to you. People weren't charging. They weren't going crazy. It was not the 1977 blackout. It was, and again, it was a friendly blackout, and people were just helping people along. And as far as I'm aware of, there was no looting.
Yeah, and I
think the lights came back on at around 8 in the morning because I remember waking up and then hearing people cheering that the lights went back on.
But everything wasn't up and running. That's for sure.
No, not fully up and running.
Cranes weren't running. There's all...
Parts were turning on slowly, but like the
Yeah.
house lights came back on.
Well, I ended up, like, my friend Matt, who lives in New Paltz, so he's 60 miles north of the city, or is that 90 miles north of the city? One or the other. He and I decided, well, why don't we walk to Brooklyn to stay with some friends? So that's when we walked from 40th Street to Park Slope, Carroll Gardens / Park Slope in Brooklyn. Took us a good 2 hours. And the funniest thing was, we're walking down 8th Avenue, just a few blocks from the park. All of a sudden I hear someone say, spare change, mister? And I'm like, what? And I look up, and it's our friend Pat, goofing around, who we just happened to walk into on the sidewalk in the middle of the blackout. He's like, what are you guys doing? He's like, we're walking to Brooklyn. He's like, my sister lives in Brooklyn. I'll walk with you. So the three of us spent the next 2 hours walking to Brooklyn.
You know how in the Marvel universe, all the characters keep running into the same characters? And you, Marvel people, kept walking into the other Marvel people, even though you're in the city of 8 million.
Yeah, it was strange. All of a sudden I was like, spare change, mister? I was like, what? Huh? What? Pat? He was actually a college friend. He was a he was a SUNY Purchase person, but he made a comic with us when we self-published our comic in the late 90s. He was one of the ones with us making comics. So he is a comic book guy. Let's see what we got. Yeah. Mid-August 2003, Mind the Comics tells us. After Marvel shifts all their main characters into being replaced by women, will 50-year-old men still buy the books? I don't buy them now. I haven't bought them in 30 years. They can shift all they want as far as I care. I read your old blog post about the blackout a week ago. Really liked it. Oh, I forgot I'd written that. I wrote a blog post about walking home and during the blackout back in 2003. Matter of fact, I think I wrote it before I had a blog. I think my blog started in like 2008, but I actually wrote the piece about the blackout right after the blackout while it was fresh in my mind. Because I wanted, and I think I posted it on like maybe the 10-year anniversary of the blackout. I was like, oh, I should post this piece about the blackout that I wrote right after that, about walking home and running into everybody.
Bill Black had this ensemble cast book where all the characters were women. What was it called?
Femme Force.
Yeah.
Femme Force. I remember that one. It was kind of a cheesecake book. I had a couple issues of it, but not a ton.
Mm-hmm.
Were they like not reissued, I'm sorry. Were they stories from public domain characters, or did he make new characters? I remember the title.
He made new ones.
Recall.
He made Femme Force was new ones, but he also published public domain stuff too. Maybe even in Femme Force at times. I'm not sure. But yeah, he did both.
Okay.
But that reminds me, I saw a post where Tim got... he finally completed his collection of Johnny Quests. He got issue, I think, 30 and 31 of Johnny Quests, which made me go to my database. I think he's still doing them, Femme Force. Wow, I didn't even realize he was still doing them, but wouldn't surprise me. But which made me, because Johnny Quest was on, I used to buy Johnny Quest back in the day. It was on my pull list all through the 80s. And I haven't really looked at them in a while. So I checked my database to see what issues I have. And it said I have issues 1 through 30. I'm like, well, how did I not get issue 31? And it was just, I went to my database also tells me where the comics are, so I went to go look for it, and it wasn't in the space it was supposed to be. I'm like, ooh, that means I moved it somewhere else and didn't note where I moved it to. Oh. So now I'm gonna have to track them down and see if indeed issue 31 is missing. But I'm like, why would my comic shop get? And Tim said that this is the first time he's seen 30 and 31 out in the wild, because since they're the last issues of the series, low print run, yada yada yada, they're just not out there. But I'm like, well, how did my comic shop miss it for me? But they must have, because it's not on my list. But did you guys ever read the Johnny Quest book from the 80s? It was pretty good.
No, Johnny Quest was never on TV here, so
I never saw the cartoon. I just started buying the comic because it looked pretty cool.
Who is publishing that? Innovation?
I think that was Comico.
Okay, so I did not buy many of their books. It didn't really pop up. And that's 80s. Let's see. I did not discover a comic book shop until the late 80s, which would have been Forbidden Planet.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the only place I would have seen it, because it would not have been on the newsstands near me.
Right,
so
right.
if I was aware of it, I would have bought it, because I am a fan of that art style or at least of the cartoon. And because it's a cartoon related product, I would have picked it up, but I never saw it. So
they always had nice covers.
I don't think I have an issue. I mean, I bet I probably have one issue in the collection, but it wasn't a series I picked up.
I grew up with the cartoons, says 62 Lefty Blues. I love the Venture Brothers because of it. Brock Sampson rules. Brock Sampson is Race Bannon, right? I think he's supposed to be.
He's basically the substitute for Race Bannon in the Venture Brothers universe. Venture Brothers is very influenced by Johnny Quest, and occasionally they reference it that Johnny Quest exists in that same universe as well.
There's 3 issues of Johnny Quest called Johnny Quest Classic that, if memory serves, Doug Wildley did them adapting the cartoons. And Doug Wildley is a terrific artist. And I think he had something to do with the cartoons too. He may have done the character designs in the cartoons. And,
I believe he did.
And those 3, I wish that series came, because Doug Wildley drawing Johnny Quest comics was terrific. Terrific. I can't remember. I think they had Steve Rude covers, and who else did cover? There were some good guys doing, and the insides were, I can't remember who did the insides, but they were good too. I think the Kubert brothers did some of the later issues, or one of the Kubert brothers. Early work was on Johnny Quest. They may have done the Jezebel Jade series, which was a Johnny Quest spin-off 3-issue micro series, or whatever they called it. But yeah, there was a lot of good Johnny Quest stuff in the 80s, even if, like me, you'd never seen the cartoon before.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of it. Maybe I'll track them down, or maybe not.
Yeah.
There's a couple of Mark Hempel covers here.
Oh yeah, he did some of it.
Tim Truman on number 9.
Tim Truman. Yeah, I remember enjoying the covers a lot.
This must be a Sienkiewicz. It is. Number 11. Here's the Rude. Number 28. No, this isn't Rude. It's Mark Hempel trying to draw like Steve Rude.
Oh, wow. I can't remember who did the insides, though. Who wrote and drew Johnny Quest? I remember liking it, but I can't remember who did it. I haven't seen it in so long.
So Wildey did the first couple of issues, then Bill Loeb's with Mark Hempel.
Okay.
There's a Dave Stevens cover here on number 3.
Oh, yes, that was the Dave Stevens. That was the name. I haven't been able to remember the last 2 weeks every time I go to say it.
Oh, nice. Tom Yates and Al Williamson on number 4.
Yeah, I remember the art being terrific.
I enjoyed the cartoon mainly because it felt like a comic book. Because it's detailed in the drawings, especially the background drawings. There was this. It was almost like the older Tom and Jerry cartoons where the backgrounds were pretty much painted, and then the characters themselves had a slick comic book look to them.
I'd forgotten that Doug Wildley did the early issues of the regular series too. I just remember him doing the Johnny Quest classics.
There's a mini series here with art by Richard Howell. I am not a fan of Richard Howell.
I can't remember what his art looks like offhand, but I remember him thinking he was kind of middle of the road.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's a Dark Horse series which was based on the '90s remake of the cartoon.
Oh, I didn't know that one.
People didn't. I liked the cartoon. Old fans didn't. There was a bit where they did. They went into a virtual reality landscape. You know, when people thought that virtual reality was going to be a universe that you could walk through.
Right.
And they got different voice styles for the characters. Benton Quest was voiced by the grandpa from the Goldbergs, George Siegel.
Okay.
But then for the second season, they because of the criticism for the second season, they went with a more traditional design and more traditional sounding voices. Especially because they had aged the characters. Johnny was now 15, and they had brought back. They had used Race Bannon's daughter, Jezebel Jade, who only appears in a couple of episodes. They had replaced Doctor. Was it Dr. Sin? Was that the bad guy?
I don't remember. It's been so long.
Yeah, they replaced him with a new guy who was quadriplegic, but he managed to log into Quest World, which was the virtual reality world, which was supposed to be controlled directly by Benton Quest, but the guy had stolen the access and couldn't log into it.
Whoops.
Mm-hmm.
Benton, yeah, Johnny, some good. Like, I'm glad Tim finished his collection after all these years. That's funny. I so rarely buy back issues, except occasionally at mycomicshop.com. That's like, I'm not on the hunt for anything. All my issues are new.
So the Dark Horse series was written by Kate Worley. Never heard of her.
Oh, was she Kate Worley? Didn't she do, what was that cat? There was a sex comic.
Omaha the Cat Dancer?
Omaha the Cat Dancer.
Oh.
I think she wrote Omaha the Cat Dancer.
Oh.
I think the artist on it was her husband or something, and he died of cancer or something. Or did she? Okay. Somebody on Omaha the Cat Dancer died of cancer. Yeah, I think that's her. Man, I haven't seen an issue of Omaha the Cat Dancer in a long time.
Okay, and the artist on the Dark Horse series, it was Francisco Solano Lopez, who was the artist on the Argentinian comic The Ethernaut. If you're a fan of the original Johnny Quest and you did not like the '90s series, so you wouldn't avoid the Dark Horse series, you should pick up the Dark Horse series just because of the Solano Lopez artwork.
Ah, okay. I picked up a first issue just because of the artwork this week. Declan Shalvey's Old Dog. What did he do? He drew some. I forget the series he drew. He drew a couple of series with Warren Ellis writing. He's writing himself this time, and I enjoy his artwork, but I have no idea what happened in this story. I just don't. It's about this, old CIA agent who screwed up in the past and now is, gets all the crap jobs, but now kind of is needed for some sort of comeback by some other super secret agency. And they keep having flashbacks, and I can't tell one time period from the other. And at the end of it, I was like, I don't know what happened. What time? And then his daughter showed up who had to shoot him. I was just like, I have no idea what's going on in it. If you were to ask me the plot of this book, I'd just say spy stuff. That's as much as I was able to figure out. So I think Declan Shalvey needs a little work on his writing. because I didn't get it. And sometimes I hear sleepy readers say, maybe I'm not smart enough to get this comic, which I always think he's just being a little self-deprecating, because I always say, I have been reading comics for how long now? 50 years? I don't know. Since I was 6, let's say, since I could read. And if I can't understand your comic, it's probably not a problem with me. I've understood a lot of confusing comics. But it wasn't, terrible. It just wasn't involving because I didn't know what was going on. Nice cover, though. Nice design on the cover. The stripes and the red and black. Stripes and red and black.
The first time I read a comic that I didn't understand, maybe it was because I wasn't smart enough. I thought it was because I wasn't smart enough, but then because it was Airtight Garage. And I got to page 8 and
like I can remember when I was 10, 11 years old, puzzling out Omega the Unknown. And if you've never read Omega the Unknown from Marvel, there's a lot of puzzles in it. Not only puzzles of what's going on in the plot, but it also kind of gave me a look behind the scenes in terms of, there's a couple of times in there, like there's one fill-in issue, and there's one issue where all of a sudden they radically change the direction of the story. And that and I can remember my 11-year-old mind puzzling out why they'd possibly do that. And it had to be behind the scene. And I knew from reading like Stan Lee's Origin of Marvel Comics and stuff like that, that behind the scenes stuff went on. And I also knew that the writer didn't always know what the hell was going on in the comic. That's what one thing Stan Lee taught me. The writer doesn't always know what the hell is going to happen in this comic. So I was like, I remember puzzling. Oh yeah, it looks like they had to change someone told them to change direction here in this issue. So I was puzzling out that stuff at a young age. Not understanding Old Dog isn't my fault.
So that would have been the fill-in issue. The one that's not by Steve Gerber or Mary Wilshire?
Yeah.
Mary Screens, I mean.
Right. Have you read Omega the Unknown?
I tried reading it. I ended up not buying the trade when it came out.
Right.
So it was probably... Although I know where to get the issues online. That's where I read the ending that Stephen Grant came up with in The Defenders.
Oh, that was just awful. I do my best to forget about that.
No, and that's one that I really don't understand how it got past the censors, because, as I've already mentioned once, they blew up a 12-year-old boy.
I have to say, still one of my favorite, sticks with me to this day, scenes, like surreal comic book scenes, was in the very first issue of Omega the Unknown. He's driving with his parents somewhere, and somebody sabotages their car or causes them to get into a car wreck. And we discover that his parents were robots, and his mother's robot head is there on the ground still talking to him. And he's just like, what? My mom's a robot? That scene was just like one of my favorites as a kid. Just this whole surreal, weird, your mother's talking robot head at you. That's how you discover your parents are robots. It's like, whoa.
I do not recall if I ever read an issue of Omega. I recall what he looks like.
Right.
So he's popped up visually in like back issues and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I never picked it up to read it. So there's a book, it ran from 76 to 77. So it was before my time of collecting comics. But I don't even know if I had an issue where he might have appeared as a guest star that would have introduced me to him to go looking for him.
He almost never appeared after that.
I don't think he even appeared in a team up. That would have been the only place. If he didn't team up with Spider-Man or the Thing, I wouldn't know
Yeah,
of him at all.
They
And I don't think
finished
he
his
did.
story. Someone, like I said, Stephen Grant was the writer. Finished his story in the Defenders, terribly, mind you. Oh my God, was it awful? And then he was just gone. No one ever brought him back or revived him or cared.
Yeah, but the thing is, Steve Gerber didn't tell anyone how he was going to make Omega get out.
Yeah, no one knew what to do with him.
So they tell Stephen Grant to wrap it up.
Yeah,
When he had his own column in Comic Book Resources, he explained, they told me to do it.
yeah.
What do I do here?
I don't blame Stephen Grant for it. Let me let that be known. I do not blame Stephen Grant for how terrible the ending of they made, because you could just tell they were just wrapping it up to wrap for no reason. They should just left it alone. But,
Yeah,
but if you ever
basically,
get a chance to read it, Wilson, give it a read. It's really a strange. And another lesson it taught me was how they tried to sell comics by their covers. Like the cover that I discovered that on, there's I think it's a John Romita cover around issue 4, 5, 6, somewhere around there, where you see Omega the Unknown standing off against a guy called the Wrench. And there's this big, huge guy in overalls with this glowing wrench, like beating Omega the Unknown and saying, you can never stand up to the Wrench. And if you read the story inside, he's just like a plumber with a wrench. He's not even a supervillain. He's not even anything. He's just a guy, a plumber in the story with a wrench. And I was like, oh wow, they were really trying to sell us this story by hyping up the villain. My 11-year-old brain figuring out how comics worked, even like the behind, like I said, because I was reading those Stan Lee Origins books because I loved the behind the scenes stuff, and this was giving me a glimpse into the behind the scenes stuff.
And from my search, it looks like they also released a set of 10 issues in 2007.
Right. At the same time, they released that as a trade paperback because there was another Omega the Unknown series by two indie guys. Farrell Dalrymple may have been one of them. I can't remember who else. Who were, because there's actually like a small contingent of Omega the Unknown fans. And these two were two of them. And they didn't do a sequel. They did their own adaptation of Omega the Unknown. Mm-hmm. They basically followed the original plot. And it looks like an indie book because the artist was really an indie guy. And it was well done. I enjoyed it. Because it was kind of like a love letter to Omega the Unknown. Mm-hmm. I've got it somewhere here. I'm going to have to drag it out and find it. But read the 10 issues of Omega the Unknown and then read that one.
Does it reach a satisfying conclusion?
I was reading Cheech Wizard, 13 years old. That will mess you up. What was that, Paolo? Did you say before that?
The new series reach a satisfying conclusion?
I think it reached a conclusion, but they didn't pretend to explain everything, if I remember right. They just kind of came up with their own. I can't even remember what it was, but they came up with their own little end to the story, but it didn't like explain everything that Omega the Unknown was about. They weren't even interested in that, really. They were just interested in doing their own sort of love letter to Omega the Unknown.
Okay.
Which I enjoyed. Like I said, you could tell they were fans of the original series.
I'll put that on my list of stuff I'm going to look up later that I'll never look up later.
I know that.
Because I write down the list. It's like I want to read it, or it's like that sounds interesting. And again, it's a look into a comic series that failed on its own, and yet it still has a strong following. Yeah. But there's only those 10 issues, which to me is I find that fascinating, that they never even attempt, because there's been plenty of characters that they would try and it didn't work, and then they would try it again a little while later. I feel that way with Star-Lord,
Oh
that
yeah,
he would pop up and then he would go, and then he would pop up and he would go, and they wouldn't let that character die. And then it kept popping in and popping out, kind of a thing. So it's interesting. What is, is that
what?
do people see something in that character that keep giving it a try?
And why Omega the Unknown was just left to die? Because it's like, besides that graphic novel from the guy in the early 2000s, there's no one really tried to revive him.
People have a hard time getting into Steve Gerber concepts.
I think so.
You notice how nobody has a real in-law on Howard the Duck either.
Right.
But Star-Lord is easier, and because
Jack of Hearts.
Jack of Hearts is really.
He's
Jack
one. I
Hearts-
always liked him. He's hard to draw, but people always try to revive him every few years.
Yeah, but the thing is, Jack of Hearts doesn't really have an interesting story.
No.
I've never read the 80s miniseries that
I liked Jack of Hearts, the 70s stuff when he showed up in the Hulk or whatever. What was interesting about Jack of Hearts, especially to a young person, is he was the kind of character who his powers made him young and out of control. And that he had the explosive zero fluid, which he really couldn't control. He had this, armor to keep it under control, and his power was blasts. He'd open up the armor a little and he'd blast things with it. But he couldn't control the power of the blasts. So he was young and out of control, and his power was young and out of control. And he only had like 4 appearances where he was like that. And then they changed him into some alien space character.
Yeah.
With the miniseries.
That one's acceptable. What was weird is that Bill Mantle was also writing Spectacular Spider-Man. So one of Peter Parker's girlfriends from the time he wasn't dating Mary Jane was Marcy Kane, and Marcy Kane came from the same planet as Jack of Hearts. And I went, why does Spider-Man's girlfriend need to come from an alien planet?
Why did the Jack of Hearts need to come from an alien planet? He wasn't an alien in the earliest stuff that I read. He wasn't an alien. Once they made him an alien, I was like, I'm out of here. But it was only like 4 issues. It wasn't like a long time.
There was an issue of Marvel Premiere where he showed up, he was a regular cast member of Iron Man before the Leighton Michelini Romita issues.
I knew him from fighting the Hulk. That was where I first saw him. Then I think I saw the Marvel Premiere one, and there was maybe 1 or 2 issues. I didn't even know if there was more than those 2. But I think did he appear in one of the black and white magazines? Darn, I can't even remember.
He debuted in Deadly Hands of Kung Fu.
Ah, okay, that might be what I'm thinking of.
In the White Tiger stories.
Right, that was it. Okay, I don't even know if I had that issue where I just read the recap. Back when they recapped everything. I also got the second issue of Terry Moore's Parker Girls. And I was completely distracted in this issue. What about the Man-Thing? They keep bringing him back. They want the Man-Thing to work like nobody's business.
But Steve Gerber did not create the Man-Thing. Man-Thing debuted in Savage Tales.
You know what it is about the Man-Thing? He's got a great tagline. Whatever knows fear burns at the touch of a Man-Thing. That's just a great tagline and plot point.
Yeah, but it's only the Man-Thing supporting characters who were created by Steve Gerber. Like Jennifer Kale and the Outer Space Barbarian and the Kim the Enchanter. Those are Gerber characters. Man-Thing was by who? Roy Thomas? Can't remember. It was in Savage Tales number what?
He added Howard the Duck to Man-Thing. My favorite Man-Thing story as a kid, and still is, Marvel Team Up 68. Had John Byrne and Bob Wyacek on the art.
Mm.
I think Claremont wrote it. I can't remember. It's the first appearance of despair.
Mm.
And it's just such an emotional issue, that one issue of Spider-Man and Man-Thing. Because despair, he touches you and you feel despair. So he would touch Man-Thing and Man-Thing would be set on fire
Mm-hmm.
and go running off into the swamp. And Peter Parker stumbled onto him. And it's just such an emotional story. If you ever want to read the best Man-Thing story, according to me, read Marvel Team Up 68.
I think my first Man-Thing was, they published it out of order, so that's why I read it like that.
Every
But
man
it was
wants a giant-sized Man-Thing. That joke will never die.
Never. It's a great joke. I remember that poster, not poster. It was a man. It was a Xerox of it, just hanging up in the bullpen, just because.
Giant-sized Man-Thing.
Man thing. I have to run. I have a meeting I have to go to. Hopefully, I'll be back within time. If not, you guys have a great
All right.
weekend. Chances are I will be back, but just in case. So take
Go
care.
to your meeting. We will see you when you get back from it. But I was completely distracted in this issue of Parker Girls, because usually I'm completely distracted at Terry Moore's beautiful drawing. It turns out he can't draw a motorcycle jacket very well. He's got Tanvi get on this. Let me see if I can show you. She gets on her motorcycle, and puts on her motorcycle jacket. And I'm like, what is that blobbish form? And the whole time it's just like this weird black blobbish form. It's not even a full silhouette. There's little drawing things in there. And I'm like, has he never seen a motorcycle jacket? and the whole time she's in that motorcycle jacket, I'm just completely distracted because I'm like, there's something Terry Moore doesn't draw beautifully? Because his drawing is distractingly beautiful most of the time. It's just like, wow, he amazes me with his ability to draw. But that motorcycle jacket was not cutting it. And I'm like, why? I mean, if there's one thing most artists can draw, it's a motorcycle jacket, because they're so graphic designy. They've got clean lines. They've got bright zippers. They've got big seams. Everybody knows what they look like. So they're kind of easy to draw in general, motorcycle jackets. If you just look at one and draw it, because like I said, they have the big collar on them with the big zipper. It usually has like a little thing on the bottom to, I don't know what all the terms are for motorcycle jacket parts. But when you see a motorcycle jacket in comics, it's usually well drawn, even if it's on Ghost Rider. This did not reach to the Ghost Rider level of drawing motorcycle jackets, which surprised me since Terry Moore is so good. I guess he just wasn't interested in drawing a motorcycle jacket.
Did Terry Moore? I don't think motorcycle jackets appeared much in Trouble in Paradise.
No, I don't think so. That might be the first motorcycle jacket I've ever seen him draw.
Mm-hmm.
At least I've never been distracted by it before. Man-Thing always seemed very depressing to me, unlike Swamp Thing. Well, that's because Man-Thing couldn't talk, and he'd always have maudlin people hanging around him.
Mm-hmm.
But is the zipper on the correct side? I don't even see a zipper.
It's a blob. It doesn't have a zipper.
Let me double check. No. He did not even bother to draw a zipper. Nope.
Unacceptable.
Unacceptable motorcycle jacket. He just was obviously not interested in drawing a motorcycle jacket. Otherwise, he would knock it out of the park like everything else he draws. But I wonder why. I wonder why he wasn't interested in drawing that motorcycle, and he just wanted to black it in and put some. There's barely even indications of folds in here. That's another thing with a motorcycle jacket. You can draw big black inky fold lines. Him, nope. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a light windbreaker. I don't know. It's so not a motorcycle jacket. Maybe it's a terribly drawn light windbreaker. But why would you put somebody on a motorcycle in a black jacket and not make it a motorcycle jacket? He had to draw them before in Motor Girl. Yeah, he must have. I'll have to go and look. Should I pull out some issues of Motor Girl? They're right over there on my shelf. Let me see. I'm going to pull out an issue and see if he drew them in Motor Girl. He can certainly draw a tank top crop top and low-rise jeans. She is not in a motorcycle jacket on any of these covers. Let's try an inside issue just for the heck of it. Let's try issue 6 of Motor Girl. See if she has got. No, she was in the desert, so she'd have no reason to have a motorcycle jacket on. Camouflage, tank top. Black tee. Nope. Yeah. I think even though her name is Motor Girl, she doesn't have a motorcycle jacket. Because she's in the desert and it's too hot. Strangers in Paradise. I think in 90 issues he may have drawn a motorcycle jacket, but who knows? Another comic I got this week, which I got because I saw a sleepy reader talk about it, and I saw it on my it just happened to show up in my shop this week, and the cover amused me. Santos Sisters, and the cover is just these two chicks walking around amidst all the purple zombies, and she, geez, Amber, what's wrong with everyone? I don't know, Alana. Maybe it's daylight savings time again. I mean, it's not the funniest joke in the world, but it amused me. I don't know why. It tickles my funny bone. So I said, you know what? I'm going to buy this, and even if I don't like it, it's going in my bought just for their covers section. And the price.
It's a what happens. It happened to me. It happened to me joke. Yeah. When there's daylight savings time, I act like a zombie too.
There you go. We all can relate to that joke. But it's issue, and the price is $4.20. So I was like stoner stuff. So it's kind of an Archie Comics style, parody comic. The first story is about
Archie Comics is not for stoners. It's for people who take LSD.
And there's this floating head who's called Weird AI Onkovic. So that's that big floating head right there. Weird AI Onkovic. Obviously playing Weird Al Yankovic, but he's an AI. That's going to be stuck in my head, thanks. I got Santos Sisters 2, Super Suckers, which looks similar but has never shipped. And the first story, they introduced us to these two characters, Spit and Shine, who used to date and spend the whole issue arguing with each other. And their assignment by the AI is to go back in time and hit everybody with this ray that turns them into purple zombies. There's no explanation for it. They're just doing it. They're casually shooting everybody in this city with this ray, turning them and arguing back and forth like they're boyfriend and girlfriend, even though they're not. And meanwhile, the Santos sisters are superheroes. Here they are in their superhero identity with these white masks on. So they fly out and see these see these two, guys fight who at this point are now fighting with each other. They steal their guns and are like, "How do we turn the people back?" And Spit and Shine are just like, here, just reverse the gun and shoot them. They'll turn back, and they go on their business.
Do they use just reverse the polarity?
Yes, they just reversed the polarity. All they did was beep, 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 bop. There he goes. Well, we'll turn them all back out of zombies. It was just
beep, beep, bop. You don't stop. You rocky to the dang boogie. Say up, jump the boogie.
Nope. And then there's another story where this strange little fox dragon just comes down and wreaks havoc, and the Santos sisters have to save everyone. It's just this lighthearted, goofy story. And then we get some weird ads that I don't know if they're real or not. And then a prayer to Saint Isidore pinup page. I don't know if this is serious or not. To encourage farmers and gardeners in their labors and help them feed numerous people.
Of course.
I'm not sure. Santos, Series 1 pinup. Number 1. It's like, I have no idea if this guy's like, a religious guy, because he doesn't seem like it from the rest of the comic. Then there's an ad for sign painting brushes. What? That can't be real. Faux art brushes. Well, if www.fauxbrushes.com is real, then it might be a real ad. FAUX brushes. But it's like, I don't know.
It is.
Look at it.
Fauxbrushes.com, decorative painting supplies.
There we go. And then I remember Sleepy Reader saying this. There's this classified ads page where he just put, like, there's an ad for Loading the Cannon, the YouTuber who sometimes comes on here and talks to Sleepy Reader. He's got an ad here. Loading the Cannon, a YouTube channel about comics. If you're in the mood for no bullshit approach to looking and talking about comics, and only comics, look no further. Search for Loading the Cannon comics on YouTube. Kleenex Wonder Girl, new album Loose Villa, now at read Cousin Harold at cousinharolds.com. I don't know what these, but it was fun. Ages 13 and plus. Be prepared to show ID. All new stories and villains. The cover amused me, and so did the insides. It's a BCW ad on the back. I wonder if this is one of those. I think there's some. What is it? Print on demand comic place. That you get your issue cheaper if there's a BCW ad on the back. So that may be what this at least is this was printed on demand at that place, and I forget how much cheaper it is if they put an ad on the back, which is usually BCW stuff. So, Santos Sisters, number 2. It was good. That's cool. First ever ad for a YouTube comic channel in a comic. Yeah, that I know. I don't know of any other one. Loading the Cannon, getting his ad in Santos Sisters.
Maybe we should advertise that for the next issue.
Maybe it was a Kickstarter thing. Could that be it? Maybe if you pledge their Kickstarter, you got an ad in there.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a cool thing to do. Mm-hmm. Key issue.
Mm-hmm.
First appearance of, what did I say their names were? Darn it, I've already forgotten their names already. first appearance of Spit and Shine. Oh, and the Spit and Shine were the Shine was the guy, Spit was the girl, and she was getting mad that another girl called, and the other girl's name was Swallow. So he got Spit and Swallow as his girlfriend.
You're lucky I hadn't yet begun to drink my whiskey.
Just as I said that, I saw you. I was like, oh no, I hope he doesn't spit it out his nose. Paolo, just found your Instagram. That's where you'll get your racing tips.
Yeah. No, but my latest Instagram post is about Steve Epting and Ed Brubaker's Velvet.
Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, that's a terrific series.
And before that one, I had a post about my latest accidental culinary invention, the cheese melt over sardine toast.
Yeah, Velvet is a good series. Have you you have a collected edition of that?
Yeah, it was published in Portugal in 3 hardcover volumes, which is fantastic because it usually gets canceled after the first one, the first volume.
Oh wow! In case anyone's never read Velvet, it's a spy series. What takes place in the early 70s or late 60s? Do you remember?
I thought it was might be the 80s now.
I don't think it's the 80s. I think it may have been the early 70s, but I used to do sardine nachos, says King's Poet.
That works.
But it was a really good spy series about Velvet, who was this woman who worked for. Was she American or British? British. So she worked for MI6, and she was actually semi-retired in terms of she wasn't in the field anymore. She was in the office because of some, she was getting old and there was some screw up, or so she was an office agent now rather than a field agent. And like every spy story, something bad happens and she has to go back in the field and people think she's the enemy, maybe someone. So there's this whole thing where she's trying to figure out what's happening. But one of the things I liked about it was they treated it realistically in terms of her being a woman spy. Don't get into fights with the dudes if you can help it. And there was even, I remember some fight scenes where she was like, I got about 30 seconds to get out of this fight. I can surprise them now. Which, because was one of the things that always annoyed me is I always lose that sense of realism in a movie or show when they have like 110-pound woman fighting a 200-pound dude. And it's just like, and they're both trained. And you're like, you know what? That doesn't happen. The dude, too much advantage, dude's dojo. So I like when they take that into account and make her do things to overcome not being able to get into a one-on-one physical fight with let alone 3 or 4 dudes. That happens sometimes. Well, they did a real good job of handling that. If you're Buffy the Vampire Slayer and have superpowers, get into fights with as many dudes as you want. I'm okay with that. But if you give me a realistic spy story, have the women avoid physical confrontations with the men or shoot them. Doesn't matter how strong you are when you're in a gunfight.
Yeah, in Queen and Country, Greg Ruckus, Queen and Country.
Yep.
The protagonist is also a female spy. She kind of suffers from PTSD, but she's a very good shot.
Yeah.
And so they send her out for assassinations, and that's why she has PTSD.
That'll give you that. Gal Gadot Wonder Woman looks like she could lose a fight with a sandwich. Yeah, but as long as they say she's got superpowers, I'm okay with it. Because, I can remember reading what was it? The Jim Shooter New Universe one, Starbrand. Which was the one New Universe book I liked. And I don't know if you've ever read it, but Jim Shooter was actually trying to keep it realistic and do what if somebody in our Earth became a superhero.
Yeah.
And the Starbrand, like that guy had like a brand on him that gave him superpowers. And at one point, he had to turn off his power and start lifting weights because he was starting to get flabby because the power was doing all the stuff for him. So he was actually falling out of shape because he wasn't using his muscles.
Right.
So I found that I always remember that all these years later. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting little take.
Yeah, that was the thing with the New Universe. It was supposed to be realistic, but then Shooter tried to make it realistic on his own for himself. But the rest of the books, never mind the realism. Like Justice, Peter David's first comic. So what happens in Justice? First thing they do is the hero comes out from a parallel dimension. What parallel dimension? Are there supposed to be parallel dimensions? And in Night Mask, which I've given art, they go into a dream dimension. So there he goes. I kind of buy the Gestalt entity aspect of Cyforce, but in the way that Spitfire's armor worked, but it's not that it minded Justice, but when then you find out that it goes against the rules that were set out from the beginning for the universe, then you kind of notice it.
Yeah, I don't remember any of those books except Starbrand. I think was the only one I read more than an issue of. And he's what they should have cast a type like the wrestler China. No. They're going to cast, it's the movies. They're going to cast the biggest movie star they can get. That's the way the movies work.
And Gal Gadot does have military experience. Because as an Israeli citizen, she had to serve in the armed forces.
I've just never been interested in the casting game. Who would you cast for this role? Who would you cast? I don't know why, but I'm just like, I'll just watch the movie and like it or not. Not that I ever watched the Wonder Woman movie. But it's like I for some reason casting actors in a hypothetical movie just I don't know, not a game I like.
Yeah, I'm not enough of a movie buff to know. Okay, this actor should do this. I watched the movie.
Too. I'm not that much of a movie buff.
Yeah, and it's like years after somehow I like an actor doing something, and I know, or it's a movie with a theme that allows me to immerse myself enough in the universe that I recognize the secondary actors. And then I see, oh, it's that guy from that movie. And then I see a movie from 10 years prior. Oh, that guy I liked from that movie was in this one before. That's one thing that I like to do when I have Murder, She Wrote on reruns. Always on, it's repeating for the umpteenth time, but I like to spot the Star Trek actors.
Yeah, she says Wonder Woman movie was a nod. Yeah, I never even bothered with the one. I mean, why would I? I don't like I don't read Wonder Woman comics. I've got no great interest in a Wonder Woman movie. It's funny, but it's like I have no interest in Star Wars, but I've watched the Star Wars TV shows on Disney Plus just because they come into my house kind of thing. It's like I've watched the and they were all okay. And I haven't been watching the Marvel movies at all, but I've watched the Marvel TV shows because, they come into my house and there they are. They're not an event. I think I like them because they're not an event. Once they build up the movie to this big event, I'm like, I don't really care for the event. But if it's just a TV show, I'm okay with it. I have the Golden Age Wonder Woman collection. There, I think, what's his name? Peters? What's the Wonder Woman art? The Golden Age Wonder Woman artist name? I think that guy is very underrated in comics history. That Golden Age Wonder Woman art is terrific. H.R. Peters or something like that.
HG.
H.G. Peters, I'm mixing him up with H.R. Giger. H.G. Peters, terrific artist.
Mhm.
Started drawing Wonder Woman late in life, too. I think he was in his 50s when Wonder Woman came out. I tried watching Wonder Woman 2 with my Palestinian in-laws. It didn't go over well. Yeah, I have not seen Wonder Woman 1 or 2. I used to watch the Wonder Woman TV show when I was a kid. That was about it.
Wonder Woman.
The only time I ever bought Wonder Woman regularly was in the early 80s when Gene Colan was drawing it. And it was only mediocre. I just kind of liked the Gene Colan drawings.
I'm kind of interested in reading the Powerless phase when she had the white pantsuit.
You have no idea how many people I've heard say that. And they're invariably either never do it or are disappointed.
Mm-hmm. Well, not being a Wonder Woman fan, I might actually appreciate it.
I've never read them. I just know them by their reputation of they're actually pretty mediocre comics. They're not.
But they're
They're
written by Danny O'Neill, right?
I think so. I don't even remember. I was never a huge Denny O'Neill fan anyway, so he was one of those guys who he made almost no impression on me, his writing, because
Really?
the stuff I read, it's like stuff I know I read by him was his Neil Adams stuff, and I was there for the Neil Adams art. The writing didn't move me one way or the other. I'm trying to think of anything else I've read by him. Not a ton.
Well, now that you've got an issue of Millie the Model, you could try to find Danny O'Neill's issues of Millie the Model.
Yeah. I read some other Batman stuff by him. I know that. Some Batman stuff in the 70s. But I'm not a huge fan of that Batman stuff in the 70s. And I usually read it for the Jim Aparo art or the Irv Novick art.
Like, because when Stan Lee started to give Roy Thomas superhero assignments, then the Westerns and Millie the Model all of a sudden were in need of new writers because Roy Thomas didn't want to do him anymore now that he had the good stuff. So that's when Gary Friedrich and Danny O'Neill got into Marvel.
I think Danny O'Neill wrote some Daredevils too, didn't he? And
he did between the Frank Miller runs.
I mean, before the Frank Miller runs.
He might have, but I don't know. And the thing is, to me, Daredevil starts with 158. So
I know what you mean. I actually was around. I started buying Daredevil off the stands in the early 150s. I had a bunch of back issues. Like my friend gave me like Daredevil like 100 to 120 right around there, and then I got a bunch more like in the 120s. I think I had a few in the 130s, but then I started buying it off the stands around like issue 152. Whatever it was just before Frank Miller took over. So, and I think Denny O'Neill may have written some of those issues just before. I can't really remember.
No. Marv Wolfman was a regular writer before Roger McKenzie.
Okay.
And it was Marv Wolfman who created Bullseye.
Okay, so then I'm completely misremembering. So then I have read even less Denny O'Neill stuff than I thought.
Danny O'Neill had a very interesting run in Iron Man before and after the Secret Wars.
Oh yeah, I was gone by then.
Because he created Obadiah Stane.
Okay.
Those issues were drawn by Luke McDonnell, which was a completely different art style to Romita Jr. layouts with Layton doing the art over it.
Right. I may have stuck around for a little bit of the Luke McDonnell run. But I don't remember any of them. My Iron Man was the Michelini, J.R. Jr.
You know how they get rid of the in spite of the demon in the bottle storyline, they actually get rid of the drunk aspect pretty quickly, about 6 issues or so, and Danny O'Neill really hammers it in. I mean, it stays that way for like 2 years, which is why Rhodey starts wearing the armor.
And
there's like 2 issues where nothing happens except that Tony Stark is a wino.
He had those powerless Wonder Woman comics when I was growing up, and they were no big deal. There was a whole Gloria Steinem movement that didn't last, thankfully. Now, actually, Gloria Steinem made her get back her powers. For some reason, they decided it would be more interesting to depower her. And when Gloria Steinem was starting up Ms. Magazine, she was like, the one female superhero who's as strong as all the men, and you made her powerless? And that's when DC went, oh, maybe we should give her powers back.
Mm-hmm. To me, Wonder Woman,
at least that
works
how the story goes. Maybe apocryphal. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, to me, Wonder Woman works in the Justice League. I like her in the Justice League. I don't really care for her as a solo because the rest of the supporting characters is kind of boring. I find the whole Paradise Island restrictive.
It's well, first of all, I think Wonder Woman has always been more important to pop culture than to comics.
Mm-hmm.
There just are not that. Wonder Woman comics are almost an afterthought in the comics world.
Right.
They've never been that popular. And I think one of the things holding back, like the whole Paradise Island thing, the whole Wonder Woman versus the man's world thing just makes no sense. We've got women in this world,
Mm-hmm.
and they do a lot of stuff. The whole idea of, Wonder Woman comes from a world without men who are holding women back in man's world. It's like, you know what? We got a lot of women in man's world who are doing great stuff, including superheroes. We don't need to be lectured by a bunch of you people from Paradise Island. So I always found that a weird sort of conflict that didn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, I understood it from a certain point of view. They wanted to be Amazons. The Amazon, strong women Amazons. I can understand that urge at the beginning, but how it became to be this weird, strange, all-women world that they've just stepped foot on their I don't know. It just never made a lot of sense to me, her backstory. My off-the-rack Daredevil started with about 113. Okay.
I sometimes think that I should read the whole San Francisco storyline when it's Daredevil and the Black Widow.
Oh yeah, those, like I said, I had a friend give me a lot of back issues of Daredevil. I was lucky enough to, when I was in junior high, I had a friend who was about 2 years older than me. So I was in junior high from 77 to 1980, right around there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a couple years older than me and would say, oh, my friend's selling us comics. You should get these issues. And these, so I'd pay like a nickel a comic or something, or $2 for a stack of 20 comics. Who knows? And I got all these, Daredevil back issues from like issue 100 to 120 or so in rotten shape. I mean, torn up. But I read them over and over. And one of my favorites, speaking of San Francisco, is I think the story took place in San Francisco with Angar the Screamer, who would scream and you'd go on an acid trip. You should have seen me trying to figure that out when I was 12. Like, what's he doing? He's screaming, and they're going on some sort of weird thing here. It took me a while to put it together because I didn't know what acid trips were. But eventually I must have read it somewhere about psychedelics. And I was like, oh, that's what he's doing. He's going on a psychedelic acid trip. What a superpower. Only in San Francisco in the early 70s.
Yeah.
I wonder how long he was in San Francisco.
About 30 issues.
My first Daredevil is PCP Angel Dust issue. Starts with a kid jumping from a building. Quite mature stuff. Oh, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that in the Miller run or just before the Miller run?
At the end of the Miller run, it's the 180s.
Oh,
Miller runs in 191, so it's in the 180s. It's those issues with the Punisher.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that deep.
Yeah. Minor Key the Punisher's definitive skull shape is introduced by Frank Miller in those issues.
Ah, okay. The Punisher. I punish the guilty because they're the guilty. That was the greatest line ever cut out of a movie. The first Punisher movie, we got to see a VHS rough cut copy of it. And that was the line we were all repeating afterwards. But then when the final one came out, it was cut out. Punisher all upset and angsty, explaining his, reason for existing. I punish the guilty because they're the guilty.
Yes.
You got it. Now I understand 100%. I wish I had a clip of that. The second Punisher movie is the best. I don't remember. Was that the which one was the second one? What's his name? Kane one?
Punisher War Zone?
How come this comment won't hide now? We'll give it a moment. Yeah, I don't remember which movie was which. I've seen so few Punisher movies. Let's try moving up to. You still there? Did I freeze?
I'm still here.
Oh, he's still there. Why is that comment frozen on my screen? That's weird. It won't go off. Hide. Did my clicker stop working?
And here I am all alone.
Whoops. Now it just refreshed.
Yes, but the comment's still there.
No, that's another comment I clicked on. And somehow the screen just refreshed and I got my control back. Another comic I got this week was the latest Cerebus in Hell, Flailing at Love. And I really enjoyed this issue. It was an issue about advice for men and women on love by Cerebus and other people in hell. So needless to say, all the advice was bad.
Also, if you know Dave Sims' history, you know that
he is not one to be giving out love advice at all. So that's what made it extra amusing. Especially now that he's like this religious reformed, not giving out love advice thing. She will be running. Yeah. An issue, like I said, I find these issues hit or miss, but the last few have been pretty well hit. So that's good. Always good. Trying to think of any more comic book news this week. I don't think there was any. Besides Mike Martz. So let's do a Reed Ripper slab. Let's see. I think I have share screen. Where is it? This is the what Jared was buying as he was graduating high school version. These are 3 comics. They came out in June 1984. This was what I was buying in June 1984. I bought all 3 of these issues. I think I still have all 3 of these issues. Zot number 4, Scott McCloud. Normal Man number 3, which is Jim Valentino. Yes, Jim Valentino, who eventually went to be on the hot artist of Guardians of the Galaxy in the 90s, which I never saw coming. In Ms. Tree's Thrilling Detective Stories, number 9.
So I'm going to slab Zot, read Normal Man, and rip Ms. Tree.
Rip Ms. Tree? But yes, the name is a pun.
Yes, but here's the thing. That is not a very interesting cover.
No, it's not. Rip Ms. Tree, read Normal Man, slab. King Spoet's on board with you.
Mm-hmm. Although I may dolphin Ms. Tree.
Ooh, is Ms. Tree the dolphin? Is her dolphin dead?
No. The mystery is the dolphin.
Wow. Rip Tree, Read Normal, Slab Zot. All three of you are on the same page.
Yeah. But do you agree that you should dolphin mystery?
Let me see here. I might want to dolphin that cardinal figure on Normal Man with the pinwheel hat. Imagine him coming at you, the dolphin coming at you with a cross.
But that is the Spanish Inquisition.
Is that what? Oh, that's what that is. That's why he looks.
You
like
were not expecting the Spanish Inquisition.
No,
with its shiny red uniform.
Two-fisted suspense stories. Haunt, Vault, and Crypt has got all of them in there. By Normal Man. I want the dolphin hat. Oh, we could put the dolphin in the hat on the Ms. Tree on the other side in the trench coat with the hat. Are you aware of Normal Man at all? Have you ever heard of that one?
I've heard of Normal Man. Wasn't Normal Man reprinted recently?
I think it may have been collected.
I'd love to read that.
Sometime in the next 10. I have not read it since it came. It's one of those things that's been sitting on my shelf since the 80s that I haven't read.
Because of all the Image guys, Jim Valentino was the only one who knew how to write.
Yeah. It was a story about, everybody in the world had superpowers except for one guy, Normal Man.
I have Valentino's A Touch of Silver.
Ah, okay.
The semi-autobiographical. What annoys me is that he never got past issue number 6. The trade only has the first 5 issues. I remember seeing issue number 6 for sale, but I don't have 6. And since that thing was canceled 22 years ago, Jim Valentino is never going to finish it.
I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again. I think it was the late 80s. Jim Valentino became one of those autobiographical cartoonists. So he had, I don't know if there was more than there may have been 2 issues of a book called Valentino. And on the cover, it's sort of Robert Crumb-ish cover of him running, and he's got bare feet. And I was in the comic book store, and these 2 10-year-olds were standing next to me, and the comic was displayed at the front register. And the one looked at the other and went, "Who'd buy a comic about a guy in bare feet?" And I still remember that comment 30 years something, 40 years later. What are we going on now? I don't even know. 30-something years later. It just cracked me up. But I was shocked when all of a sudden in the early 90s, Valentino started drawing Guardians of the Galaxy and became hot. That was just like, what? The Normal Man guy? The guy from Valentino is all of a sudden a superhero artist?
Yes.
That was weird. That said, I think I'm also slabbing Zot, but I'm reading Mystery and ripping up Normal Man.
Oh.
Because I'm in the mood for a Mystery story right now. I have to pull those issues of Normal Man out and make a video of showing off their covers because I have no idea what they look like anymore. Slab Normal Man, read Mystery, rip Zot. But I think Scott McCloud considers. I think he doesn't like these issues. Scott McCloud has said he likes Zot once it went black and white around issue 10. He didn't know what he was doing on the color issues. I remember him reading, but I liked the color issues. I bought them. Have you ever read Zot?
No, and I'm not that interested.
Oh, it's a series worth reading. It's good comics. It's just the premise isn't particularly spectacular. It's just sort of supposed to be a fun Peter Pan-ish thing, but they're just really well done. And start with the black and white stuff if Scott McCloud says the stuff before it is bad. Some really nice drawing and design in it too. It's definitely worth tracking down. I would watch the hell out of that video. Then I'm going to have to make a normal man one. Man, Ms. Tree was always a B for me, though. I always wanted it to be an A comic, but it was always a B. There was just something a little dull about it. Could have been the artwork, which was always solid but never exciting. Who did that one? I can't. Is that Terry Beatty?
Terry Beatty and Max Allan Collins.
Right. Like I said, I bought it. Bought it all. It was on my pull list for a decade, however long it came out. But I just always wanted it to be an A, and there's no Ms. Tree story I could recommend to you if you wanted to read Ms. Tree. There's no like standout part of it. It was always just solid. If you like sort of a PI comic about a tough lady and a pun for a name of the title, then Ms. Tree is for you. Zot, I could tell you, where to read, what to read. All of it, besides all of it, start with the black and white stuff. How come Zot doesn't interest you?
I don't know. I think for a superhero comic, it's as the simplistic style. It kind of reminds me of the Brazilian He-Man story, Brazilian-made He-Man stories.
It's not. It's more of an adventure story than a superhero story. Like I said, probably has more in common with stories like Peter Pan than. Because if I remember right, I haven't read it in a while. The basic story is Jenny, who's the girl, comes from our world, and she's just a regular teenage girl, all sad and maudlin. And Zot is this, super. He's kind of, I guess it's kind of like Adam Strange too. He's this superhero from another bright, shiny world. And she goes back with him into his bright, shiny world, and her life is much brighter and shinier because of Zot and all this colorful stuff going on in his world. But she keeps having to go back to her mundane teenage world. I like the cover of Ms. Tree, kind of Howard Chaykin-esque. I can understand that. Most of the covers were pretty good on Ms. Tree. Sometimes the covers were the most exciting part. But well done.
But this one was not a good cover.
That was not a particularly good one. That one was a passable cover. It let you know what was going on in the story.
Last Saturday, I spent 2 hours annoying a friend of mine. We did a video. He had asked me to do a video because I mentioned that Marvel does not start with Fantastic Four #1 because that period after the implosion is important to set up the Marvel that we know. So I selected a bunch of covers in art, and I showed the Millie the models and the war comics and the westerns and the monsters, and we did a 2-hour video.
Wow.
And that's when I mentioned there's this early Gary Friedrich here and early Danny O'Neill, and I was explaining how Patsy Walker and Millie the model had that brief period where they had full-length stories and more drama. Like Patsy Walker, Buzz Baxter enlists in the army and goes to Vietnam, and so Patsy graduates from high school and gets a job. And Millie the model has a bit more drama. There's still a lot of ridiculous humor there, but so I think they wanted more. They were trying to use the superhero drama in the teen humor titles. So Fantastic Four #1 didn't come out of nowhere, right? Because the way that they write the history, especially the official history, but people aren't aware of it. They're not aware that Marvel kept publishing other stuff. They just didn't publish superheroes. The thing is, the people who are more likely to pay attention to the history of comics are more interested in the history of superheroes because they want to know when the key issues appear.
Yep.
So anything that is not superheroes, it's like it doesn't register.
Right.
That's why a lot of people think that comics in the 50s didn't sell, or they weren't interesting. So they wouldn't care about EC, for example.
That reminds me of a thought I had as I made this other rip, read, and slab from April 1938. Pre-superheroes. Let's take a look at this one. We got King Comics number 26, Detective 15, and Funnies number 20. So I was putting this one together. And know what thought came into my head?
Mm-hmm.
See that Detective Comics 15?
Yeah.
That's a Penguin prototype.
Ah. Yeah.
He's got the top hat. He's got the tux and coat. That's a Penguin prototype right there. That's a Penguin prototype before Batman was even around.
Important key
issue.
So
it's hard to believe. Before Action Comics number 1, King Comics already had 26 issues. So comics certainly didn't start with Action Comics number 1.
Definitely not. They started with the funnies.
That looks like we got Popeye and Yellow Kid, so they must be reprints of strips. And the other one, I think that's Alley Oop. That's
not the Yellow Kid. That's the that thing.
Oh, that's right. The Katzenjammer kids.
No. What was? I always keep forgetting it's that bald head. It's that bald head kid.
Flash Gordon, Frank Buck, Brick Bradford. I guess. Reed Detective, Slab Popeye, and Rip Funnies. Ah, poor Alley Oop. Slab Henry. Detective, Reed King, Rip Funnies. Same thing. Slab Detective, Rip King, Reed Funny. Yeah, Tit Goblin wants some funnies to read.
Slab King, Reed Detective, Rip Funnies. I don't really care about Alley Oop. That Popeye cover is very good. The little kid's called Henry. I always forget.
Henry, that's right. Yeah. He's still around, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They may be just reprinting the old stuff. But then again, there's no plot, so.
Right. I remember him from my childhood, and it not being a very good strip.
Mm-hmm. But I would Dolphin the Lion in the funnies.
Who's that behind the penguin? Oh, it's a cop with a gun.
Well, if that's number 15, there are no permanent characters. Although there might be some.
No, that's the penguin. I'm calling him the penguin from now on. Penguin prototype.
Sure. But at the time, no, there was one ongoing strip. Speed Saunders was ongoing at Detective Comics at the time, and there may be a couple of serializations of pulp novels written by Major Wheeler Nicholson.
Okay.
That's what I spend my time looking over in the Grand Comics database.
They all look good. Yeah, they do. Some nice covers. I like that Gorilla Man. I think he's a caveman, right? That's who Alley Oop is.
Alley Oop, yeah, is a caveman. The thing the reason I chose to rip funny is because I really from that time Alley Oop doesn't really interest me. What are the other strips like in Alley Oop?
Let me see if I can read them. On.
Okay, so Regular Fellers, Captain East, Scribbly Scribbly is Scribbly is where my uncle first appeared. And the way how DC actually managed to buy it, I am not exactly sure, because Scribbly switched publishers. They started doing new stories in one of the DC titles. Can't remember which. Might have been New Fun. And then Scribbly morphs into the Red Tornado.
Ah. Yeah. There was some news of a lot of strips getting canceled. Yeah, that was, I think, there was like one newspaper chain that had like 75 papers that decided we're not doing comic strips at all anymore.
Yeah.
So a lot of strips lost a lot of newspapers. Him or Popeye? Who has the bigger arms? Alley-oop or Popeye? Yeah, they both got big forearms there.
Mm-hmm.
And this character is why we call, in sports, there's the alley-oop in basketball and the alley-oop in football. And the name comes from this guy. And it comes from, and it's for no particular reason. In the 50s, the San Francisco 49ers had a quarterback called Y.A. Tittle. And they also had a receiver named R.C. Owens. And R.C. Owens was sort of one of the first big, tall wide receivers in football. So Y.A. Tittle used to just throw the ball up high for him, and R.C. Owens would jump up and go up and get it. That was how they scored touchdowns, And some newspaper guy asked, I forget which one named it, asked, what do you call that pass? And they had no name for it. So alley-oop was a, comic strip in those days. He said, oh, we call that pass the alley-oop. And that's where the name alley-oop came from. Where in basketball, if you throw the ball up high and to the guy near the basket and he grabs it and dunks it, that's also an alley-oop. Mm-hmm. So throwing the ball up high for the guy to catch, being called an alley-oop, comes from that guy right there in Funnies. Why were strong arms depicted like that back then? Good question. Probably has something to do with Circus Strongman. Y.A. Tittle Goblin. That's a good question. I've never heard that question asked, so I don't know the answer. Because I don't think I've ever seen alley-oop and Popeye next to each other to bring that question up. Why are big forearms a sign of strength in comic strips? I wonder who's the first one to be like that. By the way, I might put the dolphin in the mirror with the gun, scaring our penguin prototype.
Uh-huh. So let me check what's exactly here. So that's a Craig Flessel cover.
Which one?
Detective number 15.
Okay, I don't know his name.
Craig Flessel was the guy who was drawing Speed Saunders.
Okay.
So Speed Saunders appears in Detective Comics number 1. It's DC's first ongoing feature, I believe.
Ah.
And it got merged into the DCU because he's Hawkgirl's grandfather.
Wow.
The modern Hawkgirl, Kendra.
Speed Saunders.
Okay, other thing that's in here. So there's a one-page humor strip called Oscar the Gumshoe, which is signed by Bob Kane. So we don't actually know who wrote and drew it.
Huh. That Popeye one looks like it could be clip art, meaning they just leveraged some already Popeye and Henry art, or maybe not. Does it give a credit for that one?
Let's see. So what's the issue for that one?
Number 26.
In Comics 26. Comics 26, published by David McKay. Cover is credited to Joe Musial.
Okay, so we must have drawn it.
Yeah, it must be drawn because he's not the regular artist on any of the. Must be a house artist.
I worked with roughnecks on docks with arms like that. Yeah, that could be it.
Mm-hmm.
Working on docks gives you big, like Funnies looked like it was a drawn cover. Definitely.
So there's 4 pages of Thimble Theater, 4 pages of G-Man, 4 pages of Flash Gordon, 1 page of Henry, sports features, Bringing Up Father, something called King of the Royal Mounted, Ace Drummond, which was written by Eddie Rickenbacker. Really?
4 pages he a baseball player or something?
Oh, Eddie Rickenbacker was a war hero in World War One. He was a flyboy.
Okay.
And he bought the Indianapolis Motor Speedway after World War II.
Ah. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Or maybe let me see if it's him that wrote this. Because let's see. Ace Drummond. He wrote Ace Drummond. Amazing. Nice. Ted Towers, Animal Master.
I knew a woman who dated men based on their forearms. Whoa. All sorts of weird preferences. Ace Drummond, master drummer.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. These comics were weird. They just assemble a bunch of strips and let's do a comic. Yeah. Funnies 20.
Like I said, 3 comics from before Action Comics #1.
So Funnies number 20, published by Dell. Well, this is the Funnies Volume 2, apparently.
Oh, Volume 2 even. Wow.
Yeah, because the first volume started in 1929.
Wow.
And this is the second volume, which started in 1936. So there's 4 pages Alley-Oop, 4 pages Regular Fellows, 4 pages Captain Easy. What's Captain Easy?
Oh, Captain Easy is a Sunday strip. I know. I have some collections of Captain Easy.
There it is. Roy Crane.
Our Way. Who was it?
Roy Crane.
Roy Crane, yeah.
G-Man on the Job.
He was one of these adventurers.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple. That one's a famous strip. I have a couple of volumes of it, like Dark Horse or someone put out 10 years ago.
Cicero's Cat. Let's find out more about Cicero's Cat. It's that one. Yeah, okay. Boots and Her Buddies. Our Boarding House. The amount of comic strips that went nowhere and I've never heard of because I've never bothered to learn more about the history of comic strips.
Yeah. Was Captain Easy the first adventure strip ever? It may have been. I know it's famous. Yep, adventure strip. We knew that. An online answers to the forearm is that it represents grip strength, like with lines at sea, and also to squeeze the spinach can open. Ah, okay. Grip strength. It means you use your hands a lot. Oh, look, Wilson's back.
But hello. Captain Easy did. Hey,
Show Captain us your forearms, Wilson. How big are they?
Okay, so Captain Easy did not debut in his strip.
No?
No, he debuted in something called Wash Tubs.
Oh, that's right. Wash Tubs and Captain. That was another strip. Hold on. Let me see if I got it back
here. Wash Tubs starts in 1924. Captain Easy debuts in 1929 inside Wash Tubs and is spun off in 1933.
Two volumes by Fantagraphics. Roy Crane's Captain Easy, Soldier of Fortune, the complete Sunday newspaper strips, 1933 to 1935. I haven't read these in years. So when did this come out? 2010. So it's been a decade since I've read them. But there's a foreword by Charles Schultz. But yeah, I think he appeared in Washington Tubbs II.
Okay. So here's Don Mark Stein's Tunapedia article. So Captain Easy is another of those characters like Nancy, Snuffy Smith, and Popeye. He started out as a supporting player and wound up taking over the strip. The Daily Washtub strip had been running 5 years before Easy made the scene. In fact, it was the very first successful straight adventure strip in American newspapers.
Ah. So it was the first successful.
But back when it was still Washtubs.
I'm not sure how many volumes there are of that, but I got 2.
Because Tarzan and Buck Rogers also started in 1929, but it was after Captain Easy had made his first appearance.
By the way, Wilson, see that Detective Comics 15 there?
Yes.
I am now calling that a penguin prototype character. Trying to increase its value. Because I've invested heavily in Detective Comics 15s.
Have you?
Yeah. Well, now I'm trying to drive up the price.
I would read King Comics. I would slab the funnies, or would I slab Detective Comics? Now that knowing that you have a whole bunch of them.
And I'm driving the price up.
And you're driving the prices up. I would slab funnies and rip the Detective Comics to make yours even more rare.
Oh, good. Thanks. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Have we decided where we're putting the dolphin? I think in Detective Comics, it should be in the back, that mirror. The dolphin with the gun, I think.
That is what I picked. That is exactly what I picked.
I would do
what
that.
Did you pick, Paolo? What was it?
In place of the lion in
the
the funnies.
He wanted the dolphin.
That would be my second choice.
The dolphin attacking alley-oop.
Yeah.
Alley-oop, boo.
So the other ongoing strips in that Detective Comics. So there's something here called Buck Marshall Range Detective, Larry Steele Private Detective. There were a lot of private detectives here. Something called Bruce Nelson, which is an adventure strip. It was written by Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson, art by Tom Hickey. Bart Regan Spy by Siegel and Schuster, and Slam Bradley also by Siegel and Schuster.
Oh, okay. And Wilson, we were also discussing where the trope of big forearms on characters came from, because they both have big forearms. Is the big forearms thing just looks cool? The Umbrella Academy guys like that. Also Hellboy in a way. Yeah. But I never really noticed it as a trope.
Off the top of my head, I don't think I've ever would have categorized it as a trope.
Yeah, neither would I.
If you were to ask me, hey, which characters have that? Automatically, I would go to Popeye. I would say there's that cave guy from that book I never read.
Alley-oop.
Alley-oop. Until it was mentioned, Umbrella Academy.
Yeah, I never thought of it until I saw I didn't even think of it as I was putting these together. Somebody asked the question earlier on. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Never thought of that before.
I don't see it as a trope. I think Popeye had it first.
And someone back here said something about the online answer to the forearms that it represents grip strength, like with lines at sea, also to squeeze the spinach can open for Popeye. That is, so it represents like a working man who does big things with his working hands. See, we're so used to big biceps now from working out that I guess big forearms meant you were a big, strong dude back then.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, Superman didn't have those. He had the the barrel chest. He was the
circus strongman.
He was the circus strongman, even down to the costume. So that's
where the tights and the
came from there. So,
I see.
but I wouldn't consider it a trope, only because there's so few characters
Yeah.
with it, and
If
I
it's,
think those few characters came from Popeye
if it was a
creating it.
trope, if it's a trope, it was an old trope that we don't fully grasp because we don't
Right.
know comic strips from 1932, or
Correct.
at
Yes.
least not enough
I,
of
I
them.
agree. Yeah, because I don't know if the little Abner characters had any, if there was a strong person there, except for I think Daisy May was supposed to be the strong one. But I'm not positive. I'm only going by things that I've heard on television. So I don't, because I never read the strips. So I
Alec,
don't.
I'll take things that I've heard on television for 200.
Comic books. Everyone loves them.
Another comic I got this week was the 5th issue of Grimm, and the artwork on this one is terrific. This is a story about a Grim Reaper who lost her powers or came to Earth or something. It's been the artwork on it has been terrific. Can't really see it there. Let me make it bigger.
Lost her
There was
powers or
some
lost her job?
lost her. It's a little of both. She meets her. There was a reveal in this about Luke, I am your father kind of thing. We got more into the plot of it. Some big twists happened.
I am digging the artwork.
Yeah, the storytelling is really nice on it. Take a look at that double pager with all those characters charging at each other. And it's by Stephanie Phillips, Flaviano, Enrico Renzi. Flaviano is a one-named artist. But yeah,
with a
I've been
name like
enjoying
that,
it.
you only need to one.
Been enjoying this one thoroughly. Good stuff. Grimm, Boom Studios. Boom Studios puts out some good comics every now and then. I'd like them. Though you got to watch out for those $5 ones they put out. I think they've been doing $5 first issues too. It's like, why do you raise the price on the first issue? That doesn't encourage me to get it. Alley-oop boop. Now there was even a song that went along with the alley-oop pass from the 50s. Alley-oop boop, oop oop.
I wasn't aware.
You see the forearm trope in pre and WW2 comics. Okay.
All right.
I don't know enough about them to.
Yeah, I don't know enough of the. That would be
Golden
Age, right?
Yeah, I like that one. Those ones there were from '38, which I said I was amazed that we forget there were even comics before Action Comics #1. There were still comics coming out. I was like, let me go back to 1938 on Mike's newsstand. See what's there. Mike's Amazing World or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, we could do a Red Ripper slab comics that came out in the same week as Action Comics #1.
Ah, yeah. I'll have to try that. Huh. 1939 that was? What month was it?
1938.
38. Oh, I have it right down here. The facsimile. I should look. I think it says so on the cover. June 1938.
June 1938.
I'll rip up Action Comics #1. There weren't a lot of comics out that week. There was about a dozen of them that month that I did the that one for. I feel like Mike Ploog emphasized forearms in a more naturalistic way. You've been reading a lot of Mike Ploog lately, so you would notice. But I don't think I've read much Mike Ploog in a while, which means it came out in January. Were they doing that date trick even back then?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure when that started.
It wasn't a trick. The cover date was for the month that the comic should be pulled from the stands, not the month it came out.
Ah, okay. Interesting. It was always pulled long before you pulled it when the next issue came out, at least for monthly comics, way on
Sure.
later.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Probably more of a trick then. Because like, how often did Action Comics come out? Was it monthly?
I think it was already monthly.
Oh wow.
So, okay, so let's see.
And when did the choice for comics to come out monthly happen? Was that from the beginning?
I don't know. Well, what was the first monthly comic? Because they used to just put them out. Well, I imagine they could come out fast at the beginning if it was all comic strip material. But then you'd run through the comic strips. And when you have to make new material, how fast did it come out? Interesting question. I don't know the answer to.
Well, according to the internet, because we can believe that,
Nah.
the first monthly comic book, aptly titled Comic Monthly, began publication in 1922.
Oh, wow.
And this also featured reprints of daily newspaper strips. And then in 1933, Funnies on Parade came out, which is the first colored comic book printed.
I guess since magazines were monthly, it was only natural.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because comics were considered magazines for a good long while under publications.
The spinner rack at the bus station in Savannah never pulled comics. I can find back issues I missed months behind. That is, occasionally I would find some store like that somewhere, maybe on vacation or something. And I'd just be like, woohoo!
Okay, so the Comic Monthly is not... it has not been indexed on the Grand Comics database, but they do have the covers. Issue number 1, already 10 cents in 1922. Polyhander Pals by Cliff Sterrett.
Comment from Sleepy here saying, weren't comics weekly in Europe?
Yes, because they were published as newspaper supplements.
Ah, okay. So like the Spirit section.
Yeah. So the earliest one might be the one where Les Pieds Nickelés. Well, there's probably some early examples, but Les Pieds Nickelés started appearing in 1908 in Les Patins. And Les Patins was weekly? Yes, it was. Yeah, hebdomadaire was a weekly, yes.
One of the stands where I used to get my comics would take them off the rack. They had the wall racks where the magazines were put. So they had a section for comic books. And then when the comic books were pulled from there, they would be put into a box. So you could get the comics. The newer comics would be on the rack. Older comics would be in the box. And at one point, the box used to be a lot less. So you weren't paying cover price. You were paying 50 cents for it or what have you. But then at some point, they just threw it in the box, never changed the cover price. So you had to pay the cover price whether it was in the box or not.
Sleepy said, was Spirou the first standalone Euro Comics mag? Sleepy.
From what I can gather, yes. Spirou started in 1938. At that time, Tintin was still appearing in Le Petit Vingtième, which was still the newspaper supplement because it was only in 1945 that Le Journal de Tintin started appearing. And even in Italy, throughout the 70s, there was a lot of stuff that was still coming out from newspaper supplements. I think the Spanish had more the Spaniards had more magazines than the Italians did. Although Disney, as soon as Disney started appearing weekly, there was always as a weekly magazine.
Mm-hmm.
The Italians did their own stuff and the French did their own stuff.
Another comic I got this week was Prométhée 1313, number 3. This is the weird one that's done in a European format, but it hasn't been published in Europe yet. By Andy Diggle and Sean Martinborough. Dave Stewart on colors, Simon Boland on letters, and I've been enjoying this one thoroughly. It's tied into some other comic, movie, video game stories in France. I think I don't remember what genre it was, where aliens come to Earth, and this is a prequel where the humans don't know the aliens are coming to Earth and they're figuring it out. And like I said, I'm a big fan of Sean Martinborough's art. And he's just a good storyteller. He's got a graphic design quality to his art. And the story isn't anything earth-shattering, but it's solid. It's a bunch of people trying to figure out what the heck is going on. They just found this giant spacecraft thing on the other side of the moon. And they're trying to figure out what it is, and the aliens are messing with them. But I'm very enjoyable. It's the art that really sells me on this one. And it's good stuff. I don't know if you guys have ever... Thief of Thieves was the last thing that he drew that I really liked. So I'm glad to have more of his work. I've never met him, but I think he's a New York guy, because I know people who know him.
He's in I think he's in Baltimore now, but he was a New Yorker.
Oh, okay.
And he's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah.
I hung out with him a few times.
All right. Yeah, I've known people who've met him and said he's a nice guy. I'm like, oh, cool. Good. I like his art. I like hearing guys whose art I like are nice guys. They're not Alex Toth, who's notoriously hard to get along with, even though everybody loves him. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Mark Evanier was just writing something about that on his blog, too. He's a notorious curmudgeon. And, curmudgeon, we sometimes say curmudgeon is sort of an affectionate way. Curmudgeons aren't affectionate, They're bad.
I've never met him, but I had...
I've never met him either.
I never met him, but I've written, because of art returns.
Right.
There was a bit of a correspondence, and I haven't located it in a while, but on one of his letters, he drew a duck.
Okay.
On it, and he was known for that type of thing. That when he
he
wrote
was
his
known
letters,
for his letters, yeah.
Yeah. So that there was a duck drawn on it, so it was like right on the envelope, and that was kind of a neat thing.
Yeah. That's always cool. Like, he's one of my favorite. There are certain guys who, like, I've talked to Sleepy Reader about this, who was never knew much Alex Toth and was never a big fan, and I'm kind of like, it's Alex Toth is kind of an artist's artist, and it's really tough to recommend Alex Toth stuff because he's got no definitive work. He's got no, he doesn't have a Dark Knight Returns or if you were to recommend the best Alex Toth story, well, the writing is, the drawing is always top notch, but the writing is always just kind of takes a back seat. Like his Zorro stuff. Wow, is that beautiful. But, it's a Zorro story from 72. It's not the greatest thing in the world. I've got a book full of his 50s romance novels, 50s romance comic stuff. Oh my God, is it gorgeous. But it's 50s romance. I think I was just, Space Ghost Returns. I know that Steve Rude did that. I don't remember how much Alex Toth did. But still, it's a Space Ghost story. It's not going to be that emotionally moving, but it all looks gorgeous. I love Alex Toth stuff. But it's like, I wouldn't know what to recommend to somebody who wasn't already in that. Because the only time you talk about Alex Toth is with other Alex Toth fans.
Yeah, pretty much, because it runs so many of the gambits and stuff like that, where it's like, well, yeah, if you love the Super Friends stuff, because he designed a lot of that stuff, the comic books wasn't written any more or less than being a comic, a comic book based on a cartoon, based on a comic book. So there's how many degrees away.
Evening comic crack. And he Sleepy says, I did find a Toth story that I liked. It was the Black Canary from the Bronze Age. That's one everybody seems to point to. But I think, I'm not telling you not to like it. I like it too. But it's like a really short story too. That's why it's tough to figure out what to recommend, because when you say, "Ooh, what's Alice Toth that should I recommend? Should I read?" and you tell them an 8-page Black Canary story or whatever, maybe 3 or 4 8-page stories. I can't remember. It's kind of like, it's a little thin. But yeah, that's
for him,
a very
more,
famous one.
Yeah, it's to recommend like his art books are the only things.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Toth Black and White was a great book.
Oh yeah. I have that one on my shelf somewhere. It's just a lot of that. Is that the one that's a lot of his design? There's 2 Alex Toth books. I have Black and White, which is a lot of his designs, and one that's a lot of his character drawing, his character drawings from animation. Both good stuff. Bunch once got this was at Marvel in the early 90s. They've since reprinted. I've since seen some of them printed in places. Have you ever seen? It's like he did all the model sheets in like the 60s for lots of cartoons that we know, like the Fantastic Four and the Herculoids and stuff like that. And at one time,
I have that.
There's a book with a lot of it in it, but at one time before that book came out, there was even more that Bunch somehow got his hands on and made photocopies of all of them. So he had a stack of like 200 photocopy sheets of all Alex Toth's model drawings. It was quite amazing. There we go. What's the name of that one?
Okay, so this one's called Alex Toth by Design.
Okay, I think that's the one that I don't think that I have that one too. But is that the one with all his model sheets in it, or does it just have there's? Okay, that might be it, because there's one that's nothing but model sheets, and that might be it then.
I think this is it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all pages and pages of model sheets and storyboard artwork.
Cool. And I wonder what that other one is.
Which I want to say that this might have been a book that wasn't supposed to be published. That I don't think the person who did it had the rights for it.
Right.
For those to be published. Here's that duck I was talking about.
Okay.
Many of his correspondence, he would draw that duck.
Let me make it bigger. Show us a few of those pages. Yeah, these are the model sheets he did for all sorts of cartoon shows in the 60s and into the 70s, I think. I think he designed the Super Friends, too.
Yes, he was working on the Super Friends. He worked on a lot of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that there's even Johnny Quest stuff in here. But there's also a lot of storyboard artwork.
Yeah, but a creepy. Comic Crack has a creepy collection of the Toth stuff. Yeah, I have that too. That's a good one. Collects all the stuff he did in Creepy. I enjoyed reading the book about him from IDW. That was fast. Oh, I don't think I read that book from IDW.
I don't think I've seen it.
Designed Space Ghost. That's right. Toth also designed Space Ghost. That's a beauty. Yeah, he also designed the Super Friends. The Herculoids. That's right. He designed them. And often he was like the Super Friends. When we say designed, of course, Superman and Batman already had designs, but he designed them for animation. He broke, because he was so good at simplifying, that he broke them down into forms that could be animated. And that book's hard to get, I think, too. Yeah, those are his storyboard stuff, too, from the cartoons. Some terrific stuff in there.
Oh yeah, I remember when I got this. I picked this up at
Yeah.
Hanley's.
Like I remember seeing like the model sheets before then, and then when I saw that was out, I was like, "Ooh!" You saw it at Hanley's, and
Yeah, so it went through the bullpen real quick, and then once we found out it existed, I picked it up at Hanley's that day.
yeah, it's like gotta have this one.
Yeah, basically, because I just love the characters and the designs. Oh, here's the Johnny Quest stuff I was looking for.
Yeah, well, let's make you bigger. Hold on a second. Ah, there's the Johnny Quest stuff. Okay. Like I said, I think Doug Wildley had a bit to do with that show too. I don't know if he came in before or after Alex Tother was there with him at the same time, because I don't know that much about animation. But
And I know I have another Alex Toth book, but I'm not too sure where it is at the moment.
yeah, my books don't seem to be in any order. Toth by design.
No, I have no orders in my books.
Because a lot of times you have to put books on shelves by height.
Yes.
It's like one book is this tall and one book is this tall. You can't put them on the same shelf because you need the space for taller books. So you can't put all the short books next to them.
What I found interesting is that the New York Public Library, the main one on 42nd Street, there underneath Bryant Park, there is the library continues. That's where the books are located.
Yep.
They're done by height. So if all the books are the same height, that's how they go on the shelf. So this one here, it basically takes up all the shelf space.
Right.
So, and the way it's set up, and I think that's a fascinating way to store books. The way I have them in my place is basically my art books and the everyday books that I would need, reference books, I have next to my art desk. So there's my computer desk, obviously, because it's where the computer screen is. But next over is the art desk, and then next to that is the shelf unit that has all my art books and then reference books. So when I was doing a lot of sketch cards, I was doing a lot of Star Wars sketch cards and superhero sketch cards. So I have the books there, and then the shelf that's behind me is all the graphic novels, and then books kind of like this, where they're reference books, but not books that I would use every day, type of thing. And that's kind of the order that I have it in.
Yeah, first of all, I have shelves I built all my shelves and I have them everywhere. But being that I have so many books and so many art books, I built shelves specifically tall to put the art books on. So it's like I can't put the short books on. I can't put trade paperbacks on the shelves I built for the tall art books. Then I have no place for the tall art books. So it's like, sometimes this guy's stuff is over here and over here and over here. It's not all in one spot because I can't get it in all one spot. If I've got a shelf that's 12 inches tall, I can't put an 8-inch tall book on it.
Right.
Yeah, I need that for the 12-inch tall books. And I built some shelves over here specifically that had no top on them, so I could put the tallest books there. Then they started coming out with artist editions. What I did was I built the bottom shelf, let's say 4 feet wide. And then the shelf above it was 3.5 feet wide, but I just put the ends there. So there's 6 inches at the bottom shelf that goes up past the next shelf that's on top. So I can put the tallest books there. But then they all got filled up by artist editions. I'm like, I have no spot for it. So picture it's kind of like a pyramid shelf. Each shelf is a little bit shorter than the one below it, which gives the end books room to go all the way up and put tall books on. But they started coming out with a lot of tall books. Comic strip reprints, artist editions, all sorts of stuff. Like used up all my tall book space pretty quickly within a few years. I'm like, damn, I thought that was going to last me a while. Because the base height of my tall bookshelves that I made, two shelves. I have 2 tall bookshelves. The base height was like Marvel Treasury Edition size. I had to be able to fit Marvel Treasury Editions on this shelf. And then all of a sudden they started coming out with all these books that were just as tall. I was like, damn, I
So
need some $40.
so according to TikTok, you need
Uh-huh.
just 1,000 books to be considered that you have a library.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, I don't know. Especially if it's comic books. I got 14,000 of those. So
Mhm. Yeah, it's like,
I
do
don't
you
know.
specify what kind of books? Because I
Yeah.
definitely have
I
that
don't,
in comics,
I don't know
maybe in
how many.
graphic novels.
Yeah, I don't know how many because I don't have I've been completely digital with books of text for 20 years now. It started with I didn't even like if I would read a book, I would pass it on to someone. I wouldn't even keep it. That started like in the early 2000s. I'm like, I don't have room for novels I've already read or whatever, except for maybe a couple of favorites. I don't have room for them. I'll read it and pass it on. That's what because otherwise they just build up.
Yeah.
So then when we could go digital, I went completely. I'm okay. I mean, I want physical comic books. Department of Truth number 21. That was the next one that came out this week. So I want physical comic books. But regular books, novels, I'm fine with digital.
Yeah.
Reference books, I'm fine with digital. So those are mostly digital now. But Department of Truth issue number 21, we're starting to get a lot of answers here that kind of makes the world form together in this issue. So good stuff, good art. If you like conspiracy weird stories, read Department of Truth. By who's doing this one? Tinian, Simmons, and Bidikar. That's James Timian, Martin Simmons, and the letter is Aditya Bidikar.
Who's the publisher? Is that Image?
This is Image.
Image. Okay.
Good stuff. Matter of fact, I read the first trade of this on Hoopla and then jumped in. Said, I'll get that one monthly. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And let's see, the last comic I got this week was 8 Billion Genies, number 5. The 5 of 8. The bar story continues. I call this one like it's based on a story, based on a conversation that drunks have in a bar. If you have one wish, what would that wish be? And then the drunks spend the rest of the night deciding what their wish is going to be. That's what all of a sudden everybody on Earth gets a wish, and there's all the ramifications of that. So fun. This is kind of an exercise in cleverness, as much as anything. But I've been enjoying it because I like cleverness.
It's an interesting premise. I've been listening to you talk about it. It's like,
Yeah.
It's something that could easily be like, oh, that's a weird story that no one's interested in. But having it being clever and looking into it, I think I find just the concept itself fascinating because of that.
Yeah, you can tell they thought about it. They came up with as many clever ideas as they could. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Some good cleverness. As opposed to bad cleverness, where they think of one thing and beat it into the ground. One clever thing and never let it go. That happens on occasion.
That happens a lot, especially with the corporate comics, because
Ah,
once they get painted into once they're kind of like in that framework, they're kind of stuck there. And then there's the 10-year cycle that they're stuck in, and they kind of rehash what they did 10 years before, because I guess we're supposed to stop reading it at a certain point.
yeah. I find my art books and painting and stuff are getting hard to manage. Most of them are crazy big to store. Oh yeah. There's no doubt about it. That those are all my biggest books, art books. And you want them big But at the same time, you're like, wow, this takes up a lot of room.
They get heavy too.
Oh, yeah. That is 100% true. And sometimes you find yourself inheriting hard books where someone's like, here, you're an artist. Here's this giant book. And you're like, all right, what do I do with this now? I put it on I find some shelf to put it on. I think I have a few like that somewhere. But some turned out to be pretty good. Someone gave me a book 20 years ago, a big art book on 1960s photorealism. And I got to say, I wasn't into 1960s photorealism. But over the years, that book has become more and more interesting to me. Especially when people misuse photorealism. And I'm like, no, you don't stop using that word wrong. Neil Adams is not photorealistic. Stop it. This is photorealism. I use most of them daily for pressing art and gluing up stuff. Yeah, I must say, one of the places that I press, especially when I do some custom magic cards sometimes, is I've got a stack of Milton Caniff, Terry, and the Pirates books. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And they're pretty heavy. They're about that big. They're not giant books, but they're thick, heavy books. And I lift the top one up and slide stuff under there and put it down and let that weight flatten things. That's my flattening spot, for small stuff at least.
I've done that with a comic book where it's like I put it in a it was a book I bought off of eBay. It was an Amazing Spider-Man book, and the spine was rolled.
Oh yeah.
In such a way that the book wasn't really it was basically what you get with the spine where the pages are creeping out.
Right.
Kind of a thing. So it's like, so I opened it up and I have a large book on just images from I forget which telescope. So they're NASA images. So the book is a large, heavy book. And it's like, okay, I could put it in that and then put that on the bottom and just stack other books on top of it for a few months, just so it could just cold press basically the comic book itself, just to fix the spine.
Huh. I was thinking about reading Department of Truth this week, but then I saw a YouTuber's latest video, a fellow Texan whose doom and gloom is partly fueled by believing in conspiracies, so I passed.
Think of it as synchronicity.
Nah.
The world wants you to read the Department of Truth. It's trying to create its reality.
So you can learn the truth.
A reality where Gore Vidal, a reality where Gore Vidal has read the Department of Truth.
If we all believe it, it will have happened, and he will have memories of reading the Department of Truth. I was like, we're getting near our end time, so we should sign off for the evening. Let Paolo get to bed. And I'll go and watch a little TV before bed.
I haven't been sleeping much this week.
No? You're tired?
I only stayed until 2:30 in the morning for the fossil show.
Wow. So they practically had 8 hours sleep.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm waking up at around 8.
How much sleep do you need a night, do you think?
6.5 hours, maybe.
Okay. I'm around 7, I'd say. But I'm no good late at night. It doesn't.
Mm-hmm. No, but I've been having afternoons where I feel like I need a nap. I don't take naps.
I take naps. If I'm sleepy, I'm falling asleep. I don't care.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll wake up in the morning, do a bunch of stuff, and go, I will need a nap.
That's the life of a freelance.
Just have left. Yes, that's it, But and then that's why I end up staying up late, trying to catch up on stuff.
I think I need more animal protein. Well, I always eat animal protein because I eat fish, but I need more pork.
Something to give you some fuel.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. So everybody have a good night out there. Paolo's going to go search for a pork sandwich.
No, I'm going to bed. I'll have a pork sandwich for breakfast.
Okay, then.
That is actually breakfast in some places because the
Bacon, pork.
like longshoremen, they get off work at 6 or 7, then they go have a pork sandwich.
As I'd learned from Marie Javen's world traveling blog years ago, most people around the world have for breakfast whatever was left over from the day before.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the concept of breakfast food doesn't exist in a lot of the world.
Yeah.
All righty.
All right.
Breakfast. Let's have
great
some.
weekend.
Have a good night, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.